So now let's take a look at some common network configurations when you're working in Workstation and you're creating virtual machines. You really have three choices that you can choose from, and I'll actually show you these when we jump out into the virtual networking editor, but we'll take a look at that in a separate video. But the three choices are to use bridged networking, NAT or network address translation networking, or host only networking. Now let's kind of dig into these just a minute and talk about them. First of all, bridged networking is where we're going to connect the virtual machine to an external network using the network adapter on the host system. We're just simply going to bridge our virtual on the VM to the actual physical adapter on the host. Now a bridged network is created automatically when a Workstation software is installed on Windows or a Linux host system. So by installing Workstation 8 on my host machine, it automatically, as part of the installation, set up a bridged network so that any of the virtual machines that are created with Workstation can automatically have a bridged network relationship out to the network adapter on the host machine. Now, in network address translation networking, the virtual machine does not have its own IP address on the external network, although it does have its own IP address. What's happened is a separate private network is set up on the host system. So if you'll just kind of picture a little maybe a dashed outline switch there with the ports on it, and we're going to run a Cat5 cable from our virtual machine into it, and then run another Cat5 cable out to our host machine, and then the NAT's going to take care of moving data back and forth. The virtual machine gets an IP address on the private network from the virtual DHCP server, and I'll show you how to take a look at this guy later on in a separate video. And the virtual machine and the host system share a single network identity that is not visible on the external network. The NAT network is created when Workstation is installed, and the virtual machine is configured to use the default NAT network. So if you just install Workstation, then you use the new machine wizard, and you create a new virtual machine, you're going to be using the NAT networking functionality by default. Your VM, you'll see a network adapter, you'll see its own virtual IP address, or its own network adapter, its own IP address, and that will be different from your host. But the magic will be happening, and you can connect to outside networks thanks to NAT. Now the other choice, the third choice that you have for common network connections in the virtual environment in Workstation is host only networking. And this is a network that is created virtually that is completely contained within the host computer. It provides network connectivity between the virtual machine or multiple virtual machines and the host system. In other words, it doesn't go outside. It's basically isolated. If you'll think of the local area network being the host machine and any virtual machines on there that are also doing host-only networking. Now, a host-only network is created, again, when Workstation is installed, and then you just have to choose to use that. Now, here's the main thing to take from this entire video. Sophisticated virtual networks can be created using these various networking components. Now, keep in mind, when we create our new virtual machines, VMware is kind of doing some of the hard part for us. It's just throwing what we need out there to connect to the outside world, because that's what most of us want. But we can go back in here and start to work with this stuff, and we can build some very sophisticated networks to test all kinds of things. And I'll kind of give you some hints on that when we get into some other aspects of the networking configurations. And specifically, there will be a video entitled Changing the Default Network Configuration, and I'll go show you the network editor and show you where the DHCP server is, some of the cool things that we can do out there in that. So anyway, you've got three basic network configurations that you always start off with, and then you can kind of go play with these from there and add all sorts of functionalities.